Hey guys, it's Miss Friedewald. This is part 2 of our colored pencil basics worksheet. This one's a little bit long, but I recommend that you do it in chunks and watch the video while you complete the assignment so that it's speeded up a little bit. Again, I am recording from an art teacher in North Carolina named Tiffany Fox and a demonstration that she did for other art teachers about how she teaches colored pencils. So again, this is examples of students' work from her class. And remember that the goal is to match your hues and your values, those shades and highlights, so that you create that really rich dimension using more than just blue for the blues or green for the greens, lots of different colors. If you need a refresher, you definitely should go back and watch part 1. But remember that that's important. So the key to that is mixing lots of different colors in light layers. So in this video, again, we're going to go over how to do each step of the worksheet that we have. If our results from that work look like maybe we need to spend a little more time practicing, then we might also have additional stuff that this work will apply to. So keep that in mind. So let's get started on the video. Again, I am actually watching this in double speed. She talks a little slow, she draws slow. Colored pencil is a slow process. You may want to speed it up while you work. So on this front page, you're going to be mixing your own version of a yellow green. So I want you to pull out apple green. The colors are listed over here in the boxes and to the left. So we're going to just use apple green here in the boxes that's out of the box, light cerulean, true blue, canary yellow, and also a Spanish orange in our built version of the same color. So go ahead and color in your yellow green in the box that's out of the box, or the circle that's out of the box. Now, starting with the other colors, and it really doesn't matter what order you put them in, as long as you're applying them lightly. Also, you may find that other colors work better for you. It's kind of a process of experimentation to figure out what you use best. So there's no right or wrong, but to think about your ultimate goal, like in this picture, she's thinking about that yellow green of that apple. That's the goal for that build color. So think about what colors you choose. So starting with that Spanish orange, light circles, really light value. Layer that in, fill the box, circle, sorry. Now going back over that with the canary yellow to build up that yellow. Again, it is a process of building on ratios of layers. So think about which ones you want to be the primary color and the result. That's where your heaviest choices of colors will come from, your heaviest layers of color choices. Now working in that true blue and the cerulean. Again, just even layers going over top of the whole thing smoothly. Please remember that this is being played in double speed. So she's really good and fast, and I'm doubling the speed at which she's applying the pigment. So yours is probably going to take a lot longer, especially in the early stages. Just keep remembering light layers, circles, small circles, and fill the space. It is definitely something you have to think about when you first begin, but the more you do it, the more it will become like second nature. So you can see that yellow that she's using is really starting to stand out more. She's decided that she likes the color that she's got in regards to matching the apple green to the one that she has in mind for that apple. And so she's starting to apply more pressure. That doesn't have to necessarily be your very last layer, but it should be your last, second, third, or very last. Remember that with the wax pigment, that once you fill the tooth of the paper, you won't be able to apply any more layers of color that actually show up. So save that firm pressing for the very end. Moving on to the chromatic black. Remember we talked about not using straight black. This will be hopefully the last time you ever use a solid black colored pencil straight out of the box. Instead, we're adding in the dark green, the violet blue, the Tuscan red, the indigo blue. Also, if you're feeling fancy, you can work in that mulberry, the grass green, the violet, or other colors, but a good base place to start is with those first four. So use your black, fill in your circle with your black. The reason that we do this chromatic black version instead of just black is when you think about something like a black dog or a black horse or somebody with black hair in the sunlight and how the light just reflects so much more color than just this deep, dark black. There's so much more hue interaction going on in that. And using different combinations of hues to create our own version of black is kind of like replicating that. It gives it so much more richness, so much more depth. So again, starting really light, even layers, really small circles, really light pressure. Layer it on. If you feel like it looks too cool, remember your cool colors are reds, blues, and greens, or greens, blues, and violets, then think about maybe adding in a complementary warm color, an orange, red, or a yellow to kind of counteract the coolness that you see. It's all about layering, and there's not necessarily a wrong. Go all the way up to those edges. Keep your pencil sharp so that you can get crisp, sharp edges. And when you start to see that the color is looking like you had it in mind, then you can start pressing more firmly and kind of pack it in. It adds that burnished effect that makes it really opaque and rich. Moving on to the value scales, and I'm a little worried about not doing a full-blown value scale, but we're going to give this a shot. We're going to start with the hue, that middle color, then go on to the shade, the darker, and then the tint, the lighter, because remember, every color has tints and shades, lights and darks. So starting with the blue, we're going to use at least 3 pencils to make each of our hues. So starting with that blue, she's got, it looks like a cerulean, a true blue. I'm not sure what the last one is. Light layers, circles, even distribution. And again, to make sure that you're keeping your edges sharp and applying the colored pencil in a more even distribution. You want to keep that sharp point. That's super important. So layer right over top, even distribution, fill the space, small circles, light pressure. It's often helpful to write down the color choices that you use so that while you're learning what different colors look like in the finished product, you have a reference as to which colors you used and what, that way you can compare it with the effects that they created. All right, working on that shade. You might instinctively think about using an orange as a contrasting color to add some depth to it, but remember that orange and blue are complements. So using orange could really desaturate your final hue, because keep in mind, when you combine 2 complementary colors, they make a less saturated one, meaning less vibrant. The colors found in nature, like burnt oranges and navy green or blues and army greens and stuff like that. So instead, she used a blue violet to add that darkness to create the depth for the shade. And she's combining that with the same 3 pencils that she mixed to make the center blue hue. And again, remember, this is in double speed and she's really good at this. So this is going a lot faster than yours probably will. And that's okay. All right, so moving on to the tint, the lighter value of the same hue. Starting off really, really light using those same 3 blue pencils or versions of blue. Add each one in. Now there's some trickiness to white. You can either just leave them light valued or you can overlap white. She overlapped white on half so that you can see that. But sometimes white can be problematic because it really brightens the color. But it's important to remember that it's not a blending pencil. There are blending pencils. White is not one of them. So moving on to the red. She's got 3 different values. Remember, that's part of the requirement. A crimson red, a poppy red, and a pink were the 3 that she chose. If you're using Crayolas, they're obviously not going to have the same names, but there's a lot of similar colors. Crayolas are actually really good colored pencils. The trick is to just use less pressure with them than you would with the Prismacolors because of the ratio from wax to pigment, I guess. So light value, light layers, even application, small circular motions, sharp pencil. And when you start to get your color where you want it, then you can begin to press more firmly. Working on the darker value, we just talked about like not using orange with the blue, but if you're really careful with it, you can start to work in some of the complementary colors and create the darker value without losing a lot of saturation. So she is using a grass green in this shade, in addition to a violet, I believe, combined with the 3 colors she chose to make her local color, which are crimson red, poppy red, and pink. Remember, it's a process. It's going to take time. You can definitely see that color's starting to match the hue in the center, but starting to look like a darker version, a shade of it, which is the ultimate goal. Again, it should not look like a different red. It should just look like a darker version of the red in the center box. And same for your tints. It should not look like a different color of red. It should look like the same red, just a lighter value. So that all turns into the ratios. How much of that red poppy, how much of the pink, how much of the crimson? If it looks too pink, which one do you need to add more of to balance that? And again, with the light values, you can either just layer them on and leave them as is without pressing firmly, or you can layer that white. But again, just be careful with the white so that it doesn't end up looking really bright. Sometimes it activates the color. So again, she just uses it over there on the half of the box so that you can see what it's going to do to the color. Moving on to the yellow. Yellows with all pigments are really tricky because when you add other colors to yellow, it's such a light color and it absorbs so much. It's hard to mix a shade of yellow that doesn't end up looking like poop. So in her color choices, she's going to use Perma Violet as her shade. And Again, that is a compliment, but a duller version of this color might serve equally as well to create the darkness that you need for that shade. So beginning with the hue in the middle again, the Spanish orange, canary yellow, and goldenrod are the three colors that she's using to make her yellow hue. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I just realized I didn't maximize my screen. Oh, I hope you've been able to see okay. So again, starting light, layering on even layers, fill the box, small circles, light pressure. And as you get your color the way you want it, start applying more pressure to darken in the space. All right, again, moving into that shade. Keeping in mind that you want this to be really light, it's just to add dimension and value. So add in that perma violet, really light all the way edge to edge, keep that pencil sharp. And now work your three yellows that we're combining together to make the base or local middle hue, the Spanish orange, the canary yellow, and the goldenrod in the same technique. Light pressure, small circles, build up that value. Remember that you should be being neat in this process, that being able to mix colors means nothing if you can't control where you apply them. So practice working neatly inside the box, filling that entire space. Moving on to the tint, again, your same base colors of Spanish orange, canary yellow, and goldenrod. And then we'll do the same thing with the white along the edge or the first half of the box so that you can see how the white interacts with the colors underneath and whether that makes it look lighter or not. I personally kind of like the finished effect if all of your other colors are really rich and opaque of having the white on top, but you have to keep in mind that it does brighten the color underneath. So moving on to our sphere, we practiced using our values up here. You know how to make the light tints, you know how to make the hues, you know how to make the darker shades. So shading an object to make it look like it has form is just combining that light, medium, and dark values together in the right places to create the illusion of form. So pay attention to where your highlights and your shadows are, and we'll work on using those same concepts to create dimension in this flat shape. So we're going to work with the blues for this one. You are welcome to choose another color if you like, but blues are one of the easier colors to work with. So that's often a good place to start. So for the base color, the local color, she has true blue, cerulean, and blue violet again. And for her shades, she's working with a grass green, a violet, and even working in this perma violet. So she's starting with that perma violet, which is just like a lighter version of violet, working by adding in, keeping those circles small and the color application really evenly distributed, adding in those core shadows first. Super light pressure. And notice she kind of goes over the transitional value, not all the way to the highlight, but not far from it. And she goes ahead and adds that same perma violet over the cast shadow, as well as in the core shadow of the object itself. Now working in with that grass green, we're going to start adding in some more depth to that core shadow and cast shadow, keeping your circles small. Notice she doesn't go quite as high into the shape, quite as far into the transitional shade as she did with the light perma violet. And that helps to break up the transition from one value to another, so that it doesn't have a hard line where the transitional that shadow stops and the core shadow begins. Now working in one of your blue violets to even build up that depth even more. And remember, whatever you do to the shape, you also do to the cast shadow. Still going in small circles, sharp pencil, even distribution of color, light pressure. I'm not sure why we're fanning our hands around, but roll with it. So as we're adding in our darks, our goal when we do any type of drawing is to make sure that we don't have that hard black cartoony outline on our shapes. We'll get to that again in a minute, but first let's look at how when we're adding in this lighter true blue, we can go right up to the edge of the shadow with a really soft layer. But I want you to avoid putting the blue down in the area that's going to stay white for your highlight. When you add the white over top of that, just like it makes the color look brighter when you did the value scales, it kind of creates a milkiness to it and it loses some of its depth. So we want to have a clean, clear white underneath. So again, now we're going to work in on blending away some of the dark outlines. Looking at some examples, notice how there was an outline, but your darker values go right up to that edge and it looks more realistic because of that. Here's an example of the same thing done in cool colors. So working that pencil along that edge to build another layer or 3 or 4 of that dark value to blend out the outlines or blend away the outlines. We just keep adding more and more layers. It's definitely a time-consuming process, but you can really start to kind of get into it and become absorbed into it and tune everything else out. So it kind of becomes like this state of Zen that is really popular in coloring books and things like that. It's quite calming to just become absorbed in this process. And you could probably go on forever and ever and ever trying to make it look exactly how you want it to look. But at some point, you'll have to stop and move on to the next project. Again, keep in mind, whatever you do to the object itself, you want to do to the cast shadow as well. Keep in mind that with colored pencils at this stage, you won't be able to erase because the wax is really filling in the tooth of the paper. Erasing over top of it's really just going to give you this smudged look. In the early phases, when you just have a few lighter layers, you can sometimes erase and get away with it. But at this point, there's no erasing. We also don't use blending sticks with colored pencils. Again, you just get that smeared, smudgy effect. It's really not indicative of high quality craftsmanship. So use your ability to control your colored pencils to create the technique in the application that you want. All right. Have at it, you guys. I'm sure that you guys can do this as well, but it may take a little while. Hang in there. Don't give up hope. You've got this. See ya.